Bizarre Reality Media. The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones. What is up, Bizarre Society, and welcome to the expanse of deep conversational exploration into the fringes of social norms. I'm the one they call Shane, aka the original Shane Squatch, and today for you guys, I sit down with longtime friend of the show and founder of Cryptoteeology, Joe Fogle, for a wide-ranging and wholesome conversation about Pennsylvania folklore, finding your creative niche, and building a style of authenticity that people instantly recognize. From the realities of making full-time art to Pennsylvania's strangest cryptids, UFO lore, and haunted history, this discussion blends humor, first-hand experience, and a deep love for weird stories that keep folklore alive. But before we get into this fascinating conversation, just one piece of news and updates. For anybody that is a big fan of Bizarre Inquiries, I have a surprise for you this month. You guys are going to be receiving 2 episodes of Bizarre Inquiries this month. Our reason being for that is that the very first Monday of September is Labor Day. So rather than doing it that day, we are going to be doing it the week prior. So the next live episode of Bizarre Inquiries will be happening on August 31st at the usual time, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, in the usual place, the Bizarre Reality Media YouTube channel. And if anybody has any questions, clips, or articles that they would like to submit for that, make sure you guys get it to us before then. But if not, we will of course pass it along to the next episode, which will of course be the very first Monday of October. But if anybody would like to get a hold of me for that, or if anybody is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing your bizarre experiences or encounters on the show, or contacting me for any other reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys could always get a hold of me through social media, Instagram and Facebook, and I guess TikTok too, are the ones that I'm the most active on. Or you guys could always call or text the Bizarre Reality Media hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551, and you guys can call or text that 24/7. And last but not least, for all professional inquiries, you guys can email me at bizarrerealitymedia@outlook.com. And if you guys happen to miss any of that, because I know it is definitely a mouthful, you guys can find all of that right down in that show description, quick and easy. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, longtime friend of the show, but weirdly enough, only a one-time guest, now second-time guest. Please welcome back to the show, Joe Fogle from Cryptoteeology. How's it going today, man?
I'm doing great, Shane. How are you doing, buddy?
Glad that we actually got a chance to do this again after, man, I feel like it's almost been like 2 years since we talked. And the last time we talked on the show, we had another person with us. So, of course, that's always fun, but we never got to have that one-on-one on the show. So I feel like this episode is very long overdue.
I hear you. Trying to get our schedules coordinated, right? Oh
yeah, almost impossible with you traveling all the time, doing all the fantastic art that you do, putting on all the different conventions that you put on, which even tailing after Squonkapalooza, which I believe was last weekend before, if I'm not mistaken.
It would have been last weekend, decompressing from it still.
Oh yeah, I bet, dude. After putting on an event like that, man, I can only imagine what it's like to just kind of come down after that next week, feeling like you forgot something, like there might be something over here.
Oh man, the whole month leading up to it was definitely pressure, thinking of what we're doing, trying to get things organized, last minute changes, and felt like I couldn't breathe, and just like that last few days calmed down a bit, and I'm like, okay, I got some time to relax. It is what it is. Can't do anything else if there's some problem. Oh, well, we got to just roll with it. And it was a great show. So no worries there at all.
Instant relief, and all of a sudden you feel like you need to be doing something because you were doing so much beforehand.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that. I'll just say I'm glad to have some time off and chill. I have a week off before my next show on the 15th, so it's kind of local, only a couple hours away in central PA. So not too much to worry about. Just kind of, like I said, decompressing, chilling out. I'm going to do some artwork here and just relax a bit. Because it's been a while since I've had some time to myself to do my own stuff.
I was gonna say, I feel like almost every single time that I talk to you, you're always traveling, going here, going there. You're barely ever at home, it seems like.
I try to take time off in the winter because I don't want to really travel in the winter, and that's kind of like, you know, how it is cold weather states. You're just kind of feeling Minnesota, as they say, just chill out. Great time to do art. Don't have to go anywhere, be anywhere. Just hunker down and get it done.
Try to lug around t-shirts when it's cold out too, and that's no fun.
Well, they are warm there, so if you need blankets, pillows, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You always got a backup, just in case. Uh-huh. Well, I guess a good spot to start for anybody that may not be familiar with what cryptoteeology is, if they don't actually listen to the end of the show when I start talking about all of the awesome friends of the show and everything, or, you know, it's been a long time since, you've been on the show. Maybe some of the listeners are new and have never actually taken the time to check out cryptoteeology. Why don't you tell them a little bit about what it is, what you do exactly, and what exactly kicked you into wanting to produce all you do with cryptoteeology?
So Cryptoteeology is my business. I do artwork for t-shirts, posters, trading cards. Pop culture cryptids is kind of what I've been throwing out there. I mix in some parody stuff. There you go, Bigfoot stealing his beef jerky. So again, pop culture reference. But that's what I throw out there. I just like to have fun. We were talking about wrestling. I have Mothman Randy Savage. We got Squonk Rain, Prince cover parody. But I do a lot of original art. I have a series that I do that translates into my trading cards. So it's just fun, vibrant, old school. I'm an old school comic guy, retro style art, and basically worked as a graphic designer for 17 years in screen printing. COVID hit, changed a lot of people. I was sitting home, not able to work. So I'm like, what can I do with this free time? So I just started making art. I'm like, I love monsters. I love cryptids. I mashed things together and just kind of put some stuff out there and started to take off. So when the time come, I'm like, I think I can do this full time, the support of my wife to get it rolling. And it's taken off ever since. We're now, 5 years into it, traveling all over the country, meeting all sorts of people. I can basically go anywhere at any show and I know someone somehow, somewhere, whether it's an attendee, whether it's a vendor friend, when it's my podcaster friends. So you know how it is. You see people everywhere. So it's kind of like a traveling art nomads, really the description.
Well, I give you props, man, for still being able to do what you enjoy doing and being able to be your own boss, because just in the time that I've been doing the show, and I mean, I feel like you and I kind of started off somewhat around the same time. It's like I've seen a lot of people come and go, especially with, you know, everybody kind of got everything rolling, like you said, during COVID and everything. But once everything kind of laid down, I saw a lot of like the guys that were doing these really awesome cryptid shirts and everything. They kind of just went back to the normal 9-to-5 jobs and everything like that, man. So big props to you for actually being able to keep up with what you want to do and actually be able to continue being your own boss, because I don't know, maybe a lot of people just gave up on the dream. They felt like they had to go back to it. But man, I'd rather be my own boss any day than have to go and deal with any kind of corporate structure, and just be able to like travel when I want, do my art when I want. If I didn't have like a piece that I didn't want to do, I wouldn't be forced to do it, man. Like, it's like living the life, man. The American dream is being your own boss.
I mean, it's hard. It takes dedication, but life happens. So I've known a lot of people the same way, that things just happen and they got to step back and make it a hobby. And at least if they can keep doing it, you know, you'll get your opportunity, you'll get your window. Just keep going for it. Basically, the advice I say, just make stuff happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if you're doing that as like a side thing, you know, it's just that whole idea that you have to have something else that you're working for, because it seems like, at least in today's world, a lot of the time, like the corporate structure, a lot of the times that most people don't really get anywhere with it. So it's like, I've kind of noticed it's nice to have your own little side thing where it's like you can put as much effort as you want into it or as little effort as you want into it. But no matter what, it's like your own reward system that gives you your own kind of fulfillment. It's just like, when you're doing it to an extent that you're doing it, where, you know, anything that's worth doing is, of course, going to take some effort. So, if you kind of keep that in mind and you work your way through all of the hard times with this stuff, it ends up being that much more worth it in the end when you can say that I went through the hard times and I made it through. So next time I go through some hard times with something I enjoy, I'll be able to make it through it because I've already done this before in the past. A lot of people will have that first hard struggle and they just give up on it and go back to what they were doing, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not easy, that's for sure. And that's the mindset. If I fail at it, it's no one's fault but myself. I'm not going to blame people for not buying my stuff because I'm probably not putting something out that people want to buy. If I'm not creating something that people relate to, attach to, enjoy, then whose fault is that? I can't force people to buy it, but if people like it, people are into it, then guess what? They're going to support you. And I've noticed that I had so many people, repeat customers that have become friends, become vendors themselves. So to kind of see them grow, it's just, you just got to put yourself out there and keep at it, support your friends, lead by example in a way too, because I've known quite a few people that are doing the hustle too, that inspire me. And it's just like, okay, they're doing it. I can keep going. Sometimes I'm guilty of the same thing. Like, oh man, this is tough. Like I can't break this barrier into something, this show, or I can't get over this hump. And you have ups and downs, like any job, like anything in life. It's just tough to get through it, but just got to keep at it. And you got to get by with some help from your friends too.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And half the battle I've noticed, at least with podcasting, and I'm sure it's the same with like what you do, man, is you got to try to find your niche. And a lot of the time it's like, if you don't find your niche, it's like just because you're good at something, it doesn't mean that people are going to necessarily notice you. And people get really, really frustrated with that, thinking that they're not good enough because people aren't noticing them. Like prime example, if you put your kind of artwork in front of the wrong audience, it may not get noticed. But you put your artwork in front of anybody that's like a 90s kid that was into monsters, and it's the spotlight audience. Everybody's going to love it. Everybody's going to dig it. Everybody's going to get the references. So half the time the battle is just finding your niche and making sure that you're able to expose what you're trying to expose to your niche. And at least with like what you're doing, man, like, I mean, you can't go wrong with nostalgic references and monsters because that's already hitting two niches in one. And not to mention the fact that almost every single person that's into cryptids grew up reading comic books. They were into all these like dark movies and like horror movies and everything. So it's like one ends up developing into the other. Like I've talked to enough people on the show to know that either everybody that's into monsters either started one of two ways. Well, one of three ways. Either one, family stories of monsters and experiences, some kind of personal experience that totally interjected into their life and they had to rethink their entire paradigm, or being into comic books and monster movies.
It's a pretty good crossover there. You got three separate ways, entirely different, life-changing situations. And it's true. You open up a comic book as I was a kid and it just hooked me. And reading the monster stories, there used to be these little grocery store paperback books. I think they were unexplained mysteries and stuff like that they were called. And they'd tell stories of Mothman and UFOs and, goblins haunting the night and stuff like that. And it just piques your interest. And that's how you form your interests in life and what you gravitate towards. Just certain things hook you. And like I said, absolutely. I never really thought I even had my own style of art. And I had a couple friends that when I would push stuff out there, like I kind of had that retro grungy punk rock, 60s style comic counterculture style. And I'm like, no, I don't have a style, whatever. And like now it gravitates more towards that. The stuff that I do, that's kind of the fun way that I like to throw that out, because no one's drawing monsters like EC Comics really anymore. And that's just kind of what people are like, well, that's your style. And I'm kind of have to sit back and go, I guess you're right. I do have a style, because I didn't want to be pigeonholed or like, hey, Joe does it this way and that's his way. But that's kind of where it's come now. People recognize the style, I guess.
Yeah, not even like an insult to you or anything. It's just simply like, if I look at any piece of art, I could tell that it's your art, because it's like not even in a bad way. Like I said, like Picasso, you could look at any art that's Picasso's and tell that it's Picasso's. It doesn't mean that he trapped himself into a box or anything. It's just you develop your own distinct style that's different from everybody else's. And once you develop that style, it's like nobody can do it like you. And that's just, where your mindset is. And that's where you've already hit, man. And it's like I said, anybody that knows you would look at your art, and even if it was just a little doodle, they would know that it's your art because it's your way of doing things.
Yep, that's kind of where we're at now, huh?
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. Now back to the show. Well, I guess in light of talking about cryptoteeology, of course, I don't get to do these episodes often enough, it seems like, because a lot of what's turned into, what a lot of the shows turned into these recently seems to be a lot of like conspiracies and a lot of like the weird stuff going on in society nowadays. So it's kind of nice to be able to set back for a little moment and be able to get into some monster stories. And when I do that, of course, I always like doing these ones where I can kind of spotlight them on individual states, because everybody, of course, likes to have some type of category to their monster stories and everything. So again, in light of talking about cryptoteeology, I'd love to be able to spotlight some of the monster/paranormal stories as far as Pennsylvania goes, man.
So basically, the familiar one now is the Squonk. And you have stuff like Racetown Ray. You have, what was the name I said? There was the Clarion Hideaway or Hide Behind or something. So I did a shirt design for the Cryptid Crate. I'm trying to find it now so I can remember.
You're more than welcome to screen share, by the way, if you'd like to. You should have full access to if you have any artwork you want to show off.
I'm finding it on my computer here, but I don't know where it's hiding. But anyway, so we did a design, and it had the state of Pennsylvania. It had all the cryptids from it. I think the Squonk's on there, so I can find it now. And basically just locations on where they were. Of course, it's hiding on my website. But just there's so many little folklore stories in Pennsylvania. A lot of the settlers, obviously, you had settlers, melting pot from all over, European, Germanic, pretty much everyone was here. You had a lot of Native culture, Native American culture in this area. So you get stuff that would be like the Ogawa, the Native American snapping turtle with two heads that's now told as the Monongahela monster that runs from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Fairmont, West Virginia. And it changed that story a little bit, but these folktales are brought over by different settlers and different stories are told from all of this. Like the Squonk, obviously, it's a lumberjack lore. Well, the lumberjacks, as you know, are mostly immigrants, settlers that come in and they were looking to find work and the hard labor, isolation in the forests for long extended periods of time. So, probably cabin fever, stir crazy. They're hearing cries in the woods, seeing these, coyote with mange or whatever that they've never seen before in their life. And you get these fantastic stories that come from that convert it over into maybe this is a cryptid or it's a folklore tale. And, you have the line between cryptid and folklore, which is basically just there's no reported sightings in a newspaper or something along those lines. It's a really weird, blurry line. But you get all these things that come over, like the Racetown Lake Monster, a.k.a. Racetown Ray. Like, is there a lake monster in a man-made lake in Pennsylvania? Well, there's reasons behind it. There's reasons it could be. And you get stuff that's so localized. Like, for me, there's a reservoir. It's called the Hingston Run Reservoir. I had stories from my uncle telling me when he would go hunting at night because he would go coon hunting with his dogs. There would be howls and knocks in the trees, and there was a large rock hurled into the reservoir over their head that couldn't humanly be possible. And I did a design, the Bigfoot of Hingston Run, because I would kid with him about it being Bigfoot, that it would be, hey, you're just bothering him because he wants to be in his watering hole. He wants to be left alone. You're in his territory. So I did that design. I took that design on the road with me, one of my earliest designs. And people from this area would come to me and just say, I live on that mountain. I know this story. I've heard these same things. I'm like, oh, really? Like dozens of people telling me the same thing. And I was just kind of like picking on my uncle and that type of thing. But you look back at it, it's like, what did he actually encounter? Like, who do you know? Like, what could this be?
Dude, those Sasquatch tales are one of those things that they pop up almost anywhere. It doesn't matter where it is. Like, it doesn't ever sound like it's like out of like the question for anybody to have any experience with getting like rock thrown from a Sasquatch. And I know Pennsylvania, for example, like even just driving through there the couple times that I have, you guys have so much thick woods there that you'll just have like a city and then just thick woods. Like there's a lot of researchers in Pennsylvania for a good reason.
Have you heard of the Chestnut Ridge stories from the 70s?
I don't know if I have, but even if I haven't, or if I have before, I'm sure the listeners would love to hear them if they haven't before.
So one of the good resources for that is Stan Gordon. So he's a local national renowned ufologist, obviously involved with Kecksburg, one of our talking points. He was one of the first on the scene to report about it, to investigate it. But Chestnut Ridge in the 70s had strange happenings. And that's not far from where I am, maybe like an hour and a half-ish, and it stretches a good distance in the mountainous Appalachian areas here in PA and the western and central Pennsylvania area. But stories of aliens, UFOs, shapeshifters, hollow earth theories, like insectoid monsters, and really like bizarre stuff that happened in this window of time. And it's just one of the, was at the point one of the most more recognizable Pennsylvania hotspots. People have forgotten about it over time. There hasn't been too much going on there, but that's still a selling point for a lot of researchers that travel to the Chestnut Ridge to research, hey, Bigfoot, aliens, any of that type of stuff. So it's had, like I said, so many strange encounters, and you could read different books that have something that you'd think would come straight out of like a sci-fi novel.
Dude, talk about straight out of a sci-fi novel. Like Kecksburg, that whole incident, the fact that they like rushed everything out, like I'm sure you've dug into that probably more than most people have, just considering that you're from the state, and that's, I know, one of your absolute favorites. But I don't know if you want to get into it before I don't step on your toes on this one, Ben, but some of like the weirdness with the stories that people try to write about it after, and they like redacted like 90% of the person's book, where they just basically couldn't even write the book anymore. Like, talk about some weird like Men in Black type sci-fi shit happening in Pennsylvania. And they've made it so it's like so localized that unless you know about it, like Kecksburg itself, if you know the story, is such like a weird, fascinating story, but they've made it so like localized that it's like most people just have no idea about this story.
You would be surprised the people that travel in for the festival. So the Kecksburg UFO Festival is about an hour from where I'm at. It's put on by the local fire department. Some of the members of the fire department were actually children on scene during the crash in 65. And this festival is just, it's a fundraiser for the fire hall, and they go campy with it. It's almost like a little bit like a carnival and stuff like that, but they bring in the speakers like Stan Gordon, Ron Murphy, Eric Altman, some of the local knowledgeable people of those stories. And I mean, this festival brings in thousands of people over the weekend, and people that travel to just like, if you have product that says Kecksburg on it, they just want it as a souvenir. And I've talked to people that would come from Texas, Maine, Florida, all over the place for it, because they know the story. They want to actually see the replica acorn that was on Unsolved Mysteries, and they just want to be involved and see this area that's such a well-known, not just like, it's not quite that isolated if you're not in the know, but they call it Pennsylvania's Roswell, because when you talk the two popular, like probably top 5, it's in there with Roswell and some of those more recent sightings in different states.
Well, I guess for anybody that may not know the story, I know that Orin and I covered it probably about 2 years ago on Bizarre Encounters, but I don't think I've ever gotten a chance to really like talk about it in depth on this show. And also, too, I've never gotten to actually hear the story from somebody who's actually from Pennsylvania. So for the listeners, if they aren't familiar with the Kecksburg story, I'm sure that they would love to hear it.
Sure. So basically, December 9th, I believe 1965 was the exact date. And this area is very rural. It's probably about a half an hour-ish from Pittsburgh, and mountainous farm country. So back then you'd think of how isolated it was in the 60s. You're taking your Chevy Bel Air, to the local gas station, and that's all you do. Hang out at the farm, have a party in a barn, go to school, that type of stuff. So very, very isolated rural area. And there was this, what people have described to me as a meteor that they saw that would stretch across the sky. And it was actually reported on, I don't know the specific stations, but it was reported on multiple stations between Pittsburgh and Ohio, that there was a meteor or a satellite that was crashing, that was like going to crash because it was in orbit. It was flaming up, going to land. But the unique thing about this is it was reported to make a U-turn. So it got all the way to Ohio and it turned back to Pennsylvania. A lot of the reports from the crash were younger kids that saw this, teenagers that saw this thing in the sky that flashed, and then it landed over probably 5 miles from the fire department, and one of the main Army bases was not far from this area between here and Pittsburgh. So if they were tracking it, the reports say that the military got there really quick. So this thing landed, and there was kids that saw it, and there were some people that I actually just talked to someone during the festival this week or this past year, and we were at Eaton Park, one of our local restaurants, and we were talking about the festival, and he said I was 15 years old, 16 years old when he said he saw this, and he tried to get through. He knows the back roads. He's a local guy, and him and his buddy tried to get through multiple areas, and it was within probably 10, 15 minutes of this crash sighting that all the roads, he said, were blocked off by state police, the fire department, and the military. So they were there tracking whatever this was. They were on site. Some of the people that were actually able to get within the perimeter, some of the firemen, volunteers from the fire department as well, were able to get to this crash in this field. And they said what they saw was an acorn-like or a bell-shaped craft of some sort or object. You know, whether it was a satellite, whether it was some kind of, they always go to weather balloon with these UFO crash landings or whatever it was. And
that or ball lightning, one of the two, always.
Yeah. It's always one of those, right? So some of these reports from some of the guys that were there said that, one person said that they saw this thing and it was seamless. It didn't seem to have a door. It didn't seem to have any propulsion system that they could notice. It didn't have anything but these strange glyph markings on it. They called it the acorn because when it crashed in the dirt, it might have looked like a bell, but it pulled up all the dirt around it. It singed the trees in the large area surrounding this, whether that was with fire from the crash or radiation or whatever, something exploded. But the other reports would say that, hey, they saw something laying outside of this craft. And they weren't able to get close because immediately military and men in black were there. So there were reports of gentlemen in the black suits, the sunglasses, maybe not wearing them at night, but you know how the stories go. Whoever the special task force whatnot was. So they pushed these people out. They pushed the fire department out. They were taking over the scene. No one else could get anywhere close to this. They pretty much commandeered the local farm that was closest to the point where they took over the phone lines and they erased all the records after the fact so no one could trace who was being called. And back then, you're just going off of a switchboard, so fairly easy to do. So these people the family, there was actually more information I learned about something recently was that the family that their farm was commandeered, whatever happened there between the military and the family, it like split up this family. So there was relatives and stuff that were on this farm, maybe like multiple houses on this farm. It was a large stretch of land. That whatever this did, like split the family because maybe some wanted to keep it secret, some wanted to speak out about what it was, and they were going to get disowned or something. So this is some recent information that I discovered. But anywho, military took over this farm, pushed everyone out. People witnessed radiation suits. So gentlemen going in radiation suits, pulling out something on a stretcher. Couldn't see it because it was covered. It was in maybe like a radiation suit, kind of metallic body bag looking thing is what they said that it was. And then eventually before dawn, they pulled a flatbed military cargo carrier into town, went down to the crash site, and when it came out, it had basically, you would look like it would be a bell underneath this thing. So it was covered, but it was sticking up almost like the front of an airplane or something, setting flat and facing upward towards the sky. So everything got wiped clean, and no one was allowed on that property for quite a bit of time. And with a lot of the people reporting military in the area, high military activity, I mean, this was reported on the local news stations. At first, there was reported that, it was some kind of satellite or whatnot, but then people started talking, and some of the local stations reported it as a UFO crash. There was even a story of a gentleman that was a reporter on one of the local stations that called it and dubbed it the UFO. And left this job in Pennsylvania, moved to California, and then mysteriously died in a hit and run pedestrian crash in California. So a little bit of conspiracy theory stuff there. The rest of the story pretty much goes that, hey, what was in there was this thing, an alien? Was it a government experiment? All the files disappeared. They were redacted, locked up. When the Freedom of Information Act hit, people were thinking, hey, we're going to finally get some information on this because they have to release it. And guess what? All of the files were lost.
Of course, conveniently.
Mm-hmm. So
Now,
like talking to someone like Stan Gordon, confirming stuff that he's seen and said, you have a lot of it leaning towards something was very mysterious and definitely not a government planned outing. So they were just, hey, we see something, this isn't good. They were tracking it from whatever. People also call it the Nazi bell, because there was another object similar that was found in Germany, I believe, in one of the hangars.
They said that the Die Glocken was supposedly, I believe, never actually found. So that's where some of the conspiracy comes in with the Kecksburg thing, was that people would make correlations saying that, I don't know the exact dates for it, but they were saying like there was almost like an exact time frame, almost like somebody was theoretically using a time machine and came out at that point in history. There was people that were saying that the Die Glocken and the Bell, or the Kecksburg UFO, both had, of course, the same shape with the hieroglyphics that appeared to be around the outside bottom of the rim of it. And I don't know if this is something that's just become like internet lore, if it's something that people talk about in Pennsylvania, but I've heard at least on a few places on the internet that people have claimed that some of the original people that they saw coming out of the Kecksburg UFO looked like they may have been wearing like Nazi officer uniforms, but I don't know, again, if that's just something that somebody added on as like a weird internet connection to possibly connect it to the Die Glocken. But I don't know, I feel like there are some weird correlations, and I think Orin and I kind of came to whether or not it's the same thing or not. It appears that it might be possible that maybe it works off of the same technology theoretically. And maybe that's why the hieroglyphics maybe play a key into it, is because it links in with some of that, alien ancient technology idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, it could have been, if you see German, the language is a lot of the same glyphs as in modern English. So you could kind of determine something like, hey, this says something and I can recognize it. But a lot of the reports were that these glyphs were something that weren't even, not Egyptian hieroglyphics. They weren't anything that would use, maybe they were just now, you think what we use nowadays, and we just use little like
memes,
the emojis and stuff like that. They were alien emojis. But I've never heard anyone local say anything about seeing any kind of German soldiers, because you would figure too, if you were a pilot, you're not in uniform, you're basically in a jumpsuit. So I mean, you could have seen that and maybe mistaken if it were, hey, that's an alien, he's in a jumpsuit. Like a lot of people wouldn't, you go to World War II and that era, they were in, the typical leather helmets and stuff, goggles and such like that. But when they started jumping, ahead in time, and you got the fighter pilot, like jet fighters and stuff like that, it was a different style. Maybe people just didn't know.
Yeah, not familiar with it, something like that.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And now back to the show.
Something funny to really think about, since you kind of brought it up with the whole language thing, the whole idea about Egyptians possibly being significantly more advanced than we actually give them credit for. Looking at us as a society, we started off obviously where everybody obviously used characters to try to portray ideas. But we've almost moved to a point where it's like you could almost use emojis in order to portray your idea and almost kind of create like a language out of emojis. So it kind of makes you wonder if eventually like language might just simply turn into like using symbols of pictures in order to describe ideas. And if that is like a part that kind of like maybe shows the progress of like where society could be, like maybe it shows that Egyptians were so advanced that they moved past the stage of basically emojis and created a language out of just using pictures. Like something weird to think about.
If emojis are global. So, I mean, the poop emoji here looks the same everywhere else. You know, you're going to go off of that. So it's a universal language, and it really relates to emotions. And when you look at hieroglyphics, a lot of that was just them easily describing things with pictographs, you know, and a lot of that was also art. But also, you know, a lot of discredit goes against the Egyptians for, how did they build these things? Well, they were good at math. You know, they were the first large civilization in the world. So they invented so many things because they were allowed to be smart too. It's just like everyone nowadays is like, no one could be as smart as us in modern times. But look at where we pull a lot of these theories from. You know, it's not modern. It's calculated, proven theories over centuries.
Hey, they say nothing new under the sun, and just because we're advanced in one way doesn't mean that we may not have been advanced in another way in the past. Like, we're advanced now as far as like electronics go, but it doesn't mean that, like, you know, we couldn't have became advanced in a totally different idea of how things work. Like, even kind of connecting back into the whole Kecksburg thing, I know that like the material wasn't necessarily known, but a lot of people almost talk about it like it could have almost been like a sandstony looking like rock or something like that almost. And if it had like hieroglyphics and it almost kind of had that like pyramid type color, I'm not saying that, you know, it necessarily came from Egypt or anything like that, but, you know, maybe there might be some type of correlation as far as like the technology goes, or like where the design for the type of like craft to be able to possibly work possibly comes from. Like, you know, just because, you know, we have some of these remnants of these old societies here doesn't mean they're necessarily created by us. They could have been remnants of something else that was left here, and we just reuse them, like a lot of these old societies have always said for a very long time. So when we see this technology that we're like, oh, this looks like it could possibly be Egyptian hieroglyphics, you know, it doesn't mean that Egyptian hieroglyphics were anything that was even necessarily like man-made to begin with in the first place. It could have been something that was just repurposed to begin with.
True. Yeah, true. And going back to the color of the acorn, I don't really know anyone can gauge what it looks like because it happened at night and it was gone by day. So it could have been dark. It could have just been covered in soot and dirt from crashing on the farm. I mean, if it was in a field, it could have been manure all over it. So, I mean, it could have been metallic. And also, if something was in orbit and crashed, you're going to get some burnout on it, too. So it's going to carbonize a little bit, depending on what type of material it was. And you go back to that era, too. It was still the space age. You know, we were not far from landing on the moon. So whatever they were pushing for could have been something that they were just working with experimental tech, whether it was related to some kind of, you know, extraterrestrial or not. Who knows? We'll never know that, I don't think, at all. But goes back to Roswell too. What was it? What happened there? Was some of that tech real? Did it exist? And they tried to reverse engineer it, and that's where we got a lot of this stuff in the 60s and 70s later on.
See, what throws another whole weird layer into that is, I don't know if it wasn't really like brought into like big mainstream news, but there was a couple of reports online that were surfacing maybe like 6 months ago or so that they were basically saying that they purposely put out disinformation for Roswell to the soldiers that were involved in Roswell, so they would start to spread information, and they basically were saying that it was like a cover up for something that they were doing, which is like really, really funny to me, because Orin and I have been theorizing for a long time that a lot of these UFO cases are actually human related. And of course there are UFOs, there are extraterrestrials, but you know, there's a lot of these weirdness with certain cases where they talk about mask lines, things like that. So it's like, if they are trying to cover it up that much, I mean, it almost kind of like goes back into the whole thing about, are they simply telling the truth in plain sight, or are they adding another layer to this one because this one's actually legit, and they'd rather pretend like they did it than to admit that they had no control over what was happening?
I mean, it's hard to control the narrative, and you know how the government is in one way or another. They're either way too smart for their own good or stupid enough to let things
They're
leak.
smart enough to make you think they're dumb, or they're dumb enough to make you think they're smart.
Yeah. And either way, they're just kind of always failing at things.
See, like I was even saying too, like the whole Kecksburg thing, like I know that one of the original people that were one of the original witnesses were the one that tried to write the book on it, and basically got like 90% of it redacted, where like even the name had to be changed, so they basically just completely gave up on the book. So like I'm curious what information was actually in that book that we still, as you know, people investigating or researching this specific case, still have no idea about, and that person might even be under like an affidavit, for example, to never be able to actually tell any of that information that got redacted from the book. Because I almost kind of feel like if they were saying it, it's one thing. They don't necessarily have any proof of what they are or aren't saying, but as soon as they put it into a book, then now they can specifically say, all right, this is what you're not allowed to talk about. Thank you for making us a manifesto of exactly what we don't want you to talk about. Thank you. Yeah. This is all redacted. Don't talk again. Goodbye.
Look for this.
Basically, like if they wouldn't have written the book, then they would have been good because they would have had no basis of information on what they had to protect. But if you gave them the book and you created the book, it's like, all right, thank you for creating exactly our file on what we don't want people to know. Now we don't have to do it ourselves. Thank you.
They're like, oh man, oh shit, that guy saw this, and we need to make sure that no one else knows about this. So it's absolutely feasible.
Gave him something to work back from, exactly.
Yeah.
But I guess kind of sliding into some other Pennsylvania stuff, because I want to make sure they're able to touch base on a little bit of everything. We, of course, had to hit the main one as far as UFOs go for Pennsylvania. So we, of course, have to hit some paranormal stuff. I know that you had mentioned that there is a huge plethora of paranormal stuff as far as Pennsylvania goes. But I know as far as creatures go, of course, everybody who's somewhat familiar with cryptids kind of knows about the squonk. But before we get into the paranormal stuff, would you like to throw in any cryptids that people may not know about that you'd like to make sure get remembered as far as Pennsylvania go?
So you have Racetown Ray. He's probably out there in the lexicon as another one that people have maybe heard of a little outside of the locality here. So it's in central Pennsylvania, man-made lake. The Army Corps of Engineers created it in the 60s. It was a natural glacial lake. They revised it, turned it into a more of a touristy camping, outdoor preserve kind of thing. And people started seeing a creature under the water, floating up above the water. So you can go onto YouTube. There's a theme song for Racetown Ray that some local people made about it. He's always had that goofiness to him, and it brought a little bit of like fun tourism to that, whether that was planned or not. But that's another one of the popular ones outside of there. You go a little further east, you got the Elba Twitch. That's in Columbia, PA area, outside of Harrisburg, Scranton area. So Elba Twitch is
I actually have a little tiny creature, or a little tiny 3D printed figurine from Geek Foundry, by the way. I was trying to find it, but I think I actually moved it into my cabinet of the Abba Twitch. But I had to give a shout out to them, of course, because I know that they're within the group of friends too.
Yep. They do that festival with us every year still, so it's a good time. But yeah, the Elba Twitch, she's this mischievous little Bigfoot-like creature that chucks apples at people because you don't want them in their orchard. Interesting story behind that. There was some stories of a train crash that happened years ago. I don't know the exact date on it, but it was a circus train, and it was carrying a cart, one of the train carts that had the monkeys. And, basically when they got out, they made it out to the woods. I believe it's the Chickies is the woods in that area. So there could be some kind of hybrid monkeys out there throwing apples at people, because that monkeys like to fling stuff at people.
Wouldn't that be really, really funny to figure out years later that the Abba Twitch was simply just some monkeys that were loose in the woods just trying to find some snacks and stuff, and it was never a Sasquatch, small Sasquatch in the first place, just a group of monkeys?
Can you imagine if you're early 1900 settler and you see a monkey for the first time? You would think it's a cryptid, right? Like, they're not indigenous to anywhere in the United States, and if you weren't up on the encyclopedia knowledge, well, what would you think that was? Oh, it's a Bigfoot.
It sounds like where they maybe possibly got the idea for the first Rugrats movie from.
Truth. Let's see. We got another lake monster up in Lake Erie is Bessie. So basically, same thing. The Great Lakes, firsthand, they're like little oceans. They're so vast. You look across the horizon and you don't see an end to them. You get those stories, something's down there floating in the water. So you have Bessie hanging out in there. That's another Pennsylvania hangout.
It's funny that all the water monsters end with an E, because up in Lake Superior, we got Cressy.
Cressy, yeah. Then you go to Canada and you got Ogopogo. So they're completely different.
Yeah, they mix it all up. Those Canadians.
those Canadians.
Canadians. Don't call me a buddy, pal.
Don't buddy, pal. You're not my pal, buddy. Let's see what else we got. The Gawaggle is a dog man. I know that you're familiar with Dog Man, familiar with those stories. So there's a story of that hanging out in I believe that's north of Philadelphia. Just kind of typical. Someone spotted this wolf monster hanging out, or a crazy dog that was rabid that maybe stood on its hind legs or something along those lines.
I don't know if you've noticed specifically, like, Dogman lore seems to have kind of spread everywhere, but it kind of seems like the origin of the main Dogman lore is particularly kind of like our area. It's like a mixture of like Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Like, it's almost like specifically like that subsection of the Midwest, and then it kind of spread out everywhere from there. Like, I feel like Dogman is probably one of like our region's like original cryptids almost, you know?
Something in the water there, right?
Yeah, clearly, you know, like those northern wolves, man, they say that they're like a whole other breed. Like, I'm almost kind of curious if it's like a matter of like people from the south starting to move more north, and they're just like, oh my God, what the hell are these wolves? Like, what is this?
Yeah, they're 3 times the size of a dog in most parts, like, you know, a full-size dog. So if you're seeing something like that, and especially if it's maybe standing up on a mound of dirt or a log or behind trees, you know, you're going to think that that's like man-sized, because, yeah, one of those, you know how tall I am, they could easily jump up on my shoulders and stare me in the eye.
I've often wondered, too, if like a lot of these old Sasquatch reports were actually Dogman and people didn't have that differentiation, because it seems like until semi-recently, I'm sure you've probably dived into it, but they used to have like all the different classifications of Sasquatch, and they used to talk about the more snouted Sasquatches as like the second class of Sasquatch, and it seems like that idea has kind of like almost dissipated. Like, I don't really hear anybody talk about that subcategory of Sasquatch. It seems like it's now like Sasquatch, like the flat-faced normal Sasquatch, and then Dogmen. So I'm almost like convinced that a lot of these like old elongated face Sasquatch were just Dogmen stories, and these things have existed as long as Sasquatch stories have existed. It's just that not until semi-recently, and you know, the whole Bray Road story specifically, that people really started to like differentiate this is this and this is that. Because, I mean, even, like, the whole, like, song that started, like, the Dogman thing as far as Michigan, the guy that wrote it, basically, Steve Cook, he was saying, like, you know, I wrote the song, it wasn't inspired by anything, no personal experiences, anything like that. And the guy had so many people calling into the radio station saying, like, hey, I don't know where you heard about this thing yet, dude, but I have seen this thing multiple times. It's on my property. And that's where, like, the whole thing goes for, like, the Manistee, that everybody kind of figured it out. And a lot of, like, people that don't dive that far in like to be like, oh, the only reason it exists is because of the guy writing the song. But it's like, all right, well, why is it the guy wrote the song and then hundreds and hundreds of other people started calling in saying they'd seen this thing? Like, is it the fact that the song was written that inspired everybody to call her in, or was it the fact that nobody knew what to call this thing until a guy wrote a song about it?
Yeah, well, it goes back to the point that we were talking about with the Bigfoot story that I told you, is that somebody spoke about it and spoke out, so then other people were more comfortable. And I've been to many shows where people just gravitate towards the cryptid monster guy, and they come and tell me these stories and their experiences. They just have someone to talk to.
Oh, Dave, with always getting the snarly yow stories. Like, I've never heard more snarly yow stories than from him, of people hitting a dog in the middle of the street, getting out, and there's no dog, and then a dog runs away. Like, that's crazy to hear about. Like, who do you tell that to besides maybe Dave?
He's the expert. Yeah, true. And it's just people hear about it and feel more comfortable that it's out there, and whether it's real or not, someone's talking about it. And that's going to ease people's mind. I had a pastor that come to me, and he was retired, and this was a year or so ago, and he talked to me at a festival because he was checking out all the art, and he was talking about Bigfoot, and he's like, in the 70s, I saw this. I'm a pastor. My congregation would disown me, so I could never talk about this. He's like, now it's more of part of society, and it's in pop culture, and it's in stuff like that. And he's like, you know, I started talking about my experience. So here's someone that kept it in for decades, and now that he can go to these shows and hear people talk about it, and he's like, I can talk about it too. So having somebody speak out about it, whether, like you said, it was just right, because the Beast of Bray Road song was just like an April Fool's Day prank or something, wasn't it? That he was doing a fun story or something along those lines.
Yeah, it was just supposed to be like a late night, just like fun song that he was playing on like the radio show or something like that. Like, it wasn't even like supposed to be anything serious. Yeah.
It just puts it in people's mind, and they're just, oh, me too. I've seen that. I know what that is. So yeah, he wrote something. People started talking about it, just like with the UFO crash, that if you go to a town hall at some of these UFO festivals, you'll get people that will sit there in the back of the show the whole time, and then at the end they go up and they're talking to people, talking to the speakers and saying, I've seen this and I feel more comfortable talking to you because you've seen this.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to that deep conversation you crave.
Oh, dude, it's like just a matter of getting people to be a little bit more comfortable. Like, it's crazy, dude. Like, we have a bunch of these, like, a bunch of people that are, like, Spanish speakers and stuff in my work. And, of course, they're all kind of, like, quiet at first, but you get them talking about stuff, and then they get comfortable. And it's like, once you get them talking about stuff, it's like, oh, have you heard of La Mona? Have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? And it's like just a matter of like they don't want to tell these stories because it's just like they sound crazy telling them. But if you want to be an open ear to hear them, like they're more than happy to tell you about all these like crazy stories that they've experienced and stuff. Like again, it's just a matter of like being a comfortable ear for somebody to make them not feel like they're batshit crazy for trying to talk about weird things they've experienced. Because half the time it's like people aren't necessarily held to any specific truth on what they experience. They just want somebody to try to sort it out with them. And if they have somebody that's instantly telling them that they're wrong, or they're telling them exactly what they saw and not like, you could have seen this, you could have seen this, you could have seen this, then it completely like sours people and they don't want to tell anybody else about the story because they don't want it to be locked in as like, oh, I saw a Bigfoot, or oh, I saw this, oh, I saw that. They just want to hear multiple perspectives on like what they could have possibly seen and not, you know, somebody again telling them definitely this is what you saw, for example.
Yeah, you know, like the Bigfoot experts out there, right? That it's what they saw and that's all that exists and no one else is right.
Yeah, those are some of the guys that are throwing out the stories that don't fit into their paradigms, unfortunately, because I'm not saying Bigfoot is flesh and blood. I'm not saying he's not flesh and blood, but I'm saying that if you're doing well-rounded research, I think I talked about this on a recent show, Bizarre Encounters, that a lot of people like to do this research where they're like, nope, throw it out, nope, throw it out, nope, throw it out. And some of the most respected researchers are people that are ex-police for the reason that they investigate like police do, meaning that they're not throwing any story out. They're going to take all the stories in because they know if there's some kind of truth hidden in the middle. They're going to look at the evidence that's present, and then they're going to look at the evidence that's present in comparison with those stories to understand what those possible perspectives are. But unfortunately, not a lot of people, I feel like, are doing that all the time, especially when they're held in like one specific group, and they'd rather just throw out the story rather than be like for example, you know, somebody says, I saw a Sasquatch and there was this weird light off in the woods. You know, a lot of researchers are just going to throw that one off and not even want to touch that one. But if you would have kept that within the paradigm, you know, maybe it was some kind of orb in the woods, but also maybe it could have been somebody else that was pulling up in a car on another side. And if you would have done the right investigation, then you would have realized that there was another person you could talk to that maybe even saw the direction that the Sasquatch went. But because you threw out the information that sounded like it was an orb in the woods, you didn't later on realize that with 5 other people's stories, that was somebody else's car and there's another person that could be another piece of the story. But like I said, it's the way that certain people research, man, drives me crazy.
A lot of those investigators, they want to go solo and they don't want to collaborate and coordinate their information. And that's what you're supposed to do. You think a CSI or homicide detective, and it's like what you said, you can't discount any story. You can't just focus on, hey, the husband did it because I don't feel like he's a good guy because he has a record. Well, you have to look at the facts and the evidence, and you have to basically try to coordinate that with others that are investigating it with you to say, hey, what did you see at the crime scene? What did you see, you know, the coroner saw? What did the autopsy say? And it's a lot of these people just, I'm just going to prove my idea right. And that's where they go wrong with it.
Yeah, like a lot of people hear like Sasquatch, Dogman, and they'll throw that one out. They're like, oh yeah, those two don't go together. But then it's like, all right, there can be a million other perspectives on this. One, maybe they are part of the same group of creatures, meaning that, you know, the snout-nosed Sasquatches are actually just snout-nosed Sasquatches, not actually Dogmen. Or on the other side, they're 2 totally different groups that are warring it out. Or they're 2 totally different groups that somehow cohabitate together. But it's like if you're going to throw out all that information, you can never figure out where that truth ends up lying in the middle. And like I said, it could be something as simple as they are all the same group, but there are snout-nosed ones, and we just started differentiating them because people just like having a new monster to talk about, you know?
Exactly. A lot of places like to just make up their own cryptids and then just have a festival for them and try and get tourism. So, I mean, yeah, it's out there.
Yeah, that's definitely out there too. I mean, there's other ones too that it's like they're clearly folklore, but people almost like want to push them too far, and because they push them too far into the category of cryptids, it almost kind of makes it so it like sours the name completely of all of them. Like there's certain ones, of course, that even as cryptid investigators, we're like, yes, we thoroughly enjoy the folklore of it, but we know that there is no possibility that this is actually a real thing. But unfortunately, it's like people will see that whole group all at once and they'll associate like Sasquatch with this cryptid that's clearly like some piece of folklore, and they'll be like, oh, they're all in the same group, and then they'll associate the one that has a lot of good scientific evidence for being real with the one that is clearly just, like
made up.
Yeah, clearly made up. Like, as much as I love the squonk, like the origin of the squonk basically comes down to a book that a guy was writing trying to save the Pennsylvania forest, which has very humble meaning behind what he was trying to do. But you look at it from the paradigm that it was in the same book that people are talking about snipes, and anybody that's in the Midwest knows about their grandparents telling them to go snipe hunting at night and stuff. So it's like, because it gets grouped in with the same category.
That's not central to the Midwest. That's here too. We got that.
Yeah,
we were trying to go snipe hunting when we were kids. I know.
Yeah, so it's like, unfortunately, it's like, as much as everybody loves the squonk, it's like there's not a lot of like cryptid researchers that are like, yes, there's this pig that turns into a liquid in the woods, but they love the story all the same, and they want to keep the story alive all the same, just because it speaks of a certain part of history and a certain fear that people had at that certain time in history, which is what the fascinating part is.
You go back to a little bit of separating folklore from cryptid, and with the squonk, obviously, as they call me, the squonk daddy.
Big old squonk daddy.
Big old squonk daddy. But taking the squonk out on the road, talking about the squonk, bringing it into people's attention, whether this is a cause or effect of this, but I've had people now come up to me and basically tell me stories about squonk sightings in Pennsylvania. I've had at least 3 people. Now, whether that's just now that's in their mind and they want to talk about this thing that they thought they saw because it's not actual fact. But again, it goes back to, are people talking about this thing outside of this because of us? Or was this kind of there? And now that we're bringing attention to the squonk, there's now tales of the squonk out there.
See, and that's where it kind of gets into this like really, really weird mind-bending concept that I think kind of leads into a lot of the paranormal, which actually might lead into some of these kind of tailing off like Pennsylvania, like paranormal stories. But
your state of mind, right?
Yeah, I often wonder if it's a matter of, no, not even that, but it's like you project thought onto something and it's going to react. Almost like the fact that humans have a natural ability to infect or to affect our environments, which we've already seen with stuff like the split slit experiment and things like that. So it's like, nobody's thinking about the squonk, nobody's experiencing a squonk, but enough people are thinking about the squonk, then all of a sudden it creates this like, I hate to say like a telepathic ripple, but almost like a telepathic ripple where things start happening in that area because people are putting thought into that area. Meaning that like a lot of the time, I don't think a lot of these houses are full-blown haunted. I think it's the fact that so many people think that they're haunted that it's almost like people's ability to manipulate reality and focus all of their energy onto one area starts making that area manipulate things. Like, that's what I think might happen with some of these experiences. Maybe even going back into the Dogman thing with the song was once enough people were thinking about it, all of a sudden there was this niche that reality started filling that niche because people were thinking about that specific thing. So that could be what happens with the squonk is...
If you can believe in cryptids and monsters, and you should believe in the metaphysical, and then there should be connections to those, so it makes total sense. Like I said, you will something into existence when
like
enough
a tulpa.
Thought and energy is put into it. Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious if maybe you guys are creating a tulpa of the squonk out there in Pennsylvania, man. If all of a sudden in the next 10 years there's a ridiculous amount of squonk sightings and somebody legitimately says that they saw a pig turn into a liquid, I feel like you guys might have something to do with it.
Well, I mean, that could just be at the spam factory, but...
I'm going to cross my fingers that maybe it'll be something real. I got that little bit of optimism where, I may know that something's bullshit, but I got that little glimmer of hope in the back of my mind that maybe there might be some truth or validity to it.
Because how cool would it be, right?
Right? But the problem would be you'd never be able to catch it because as soon as you catch it, you just have a wet bag.
So you just gotta, you don't try to catch it. You just invite it to Squonkapalooza.
There you go. Yeah. That would be the way to end it all would be you'd have some guy walk in with a squonk. Actually, better not. Why not the squonk daddy walk in with a squonk at Squonkapalooza?
Oh, there you go. I would be the one that would never see a squonk. That would be my luck.
As you turn to look at it, it would just turn into liquid. And you'd be like, no!
Oh, well, I'll still celebrate you, squonk. Somebody saw you.
As you turn around, it turns back into a squonk and runs away.
Well, we have one of the local newspapers that vends at our show now, so we could get on that report quick, right? We could have him You know, here's a reporting on site. Get the cameras rolling. Get the news station over here.
Inquiries About Reality will return after this quick commercial break. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
Well, I guess before we tail off completely, of course, I kind of teased the listeners a little bit about some of these paranormal stories from Pennsylvania. So I guess a perfect way to close out, let's get into a couple of these paranormal stories from Pennsylvania.
All right. So a couple of them I learned from some of the haunted history tours locally here and in Pittsburgh. There's obviously Johnstown, Pennsylvania has had 3 tragic floods over the years. And, you know, when tragedy hits an area, people say that the energy, like the cloud of energy, dark energy, just hovers over it and things stay. They don't release. They don't leave. So a lot of that results in stories everywhere. So one of the stories would be from the flood. There was a stone bridge in Johnstown when the 1889 flood, which was the most tragic of them all, was caused by Andrew Carnegie and a bunch of his friends that had a dam that they didn't want to fix up, and they thought it would be fine. And storms hit around Memorial Day, torrential downpour for days. The dam broke, basically wiped Johnstown off of the map. All this stuff in the valley just circled and circled because this stone railroad bridge had 7 arches. All the houses clogged up there, and everything lit on fire because guess what? Coal and wood burning stoves. So people say in that area by the bridge, the trails that go up the mountains, that there's all sorts of ghostly apparitions that have been seen over the years, you know, cries and screams, people that were seen on the railroad tracks with their flesh melting. So there's all sorts of stuff from those stories. We also have a local Civil War museum, and I guess not quite museum because it's the GAR, so it's a Civil War veterans kind of, if you'd look at that way, you know, the Grand Old Republic kind of thing. And there's relics that they bring in from all over the country to display, to collect, to talk about. And they basically named the ghosts in this museum because there's so many there, and they're very particular about the people that they know, and they're very particular about who comes into the building. They get really active if they don't like someone from somewhere, like sometimes particular states, like if you were from the South, they don't like you. You know, some of these dressed in full, you know, Union regalia type of stuff. You talk about one of the stories that I have on one of my shirts was the White Lady of Willow Beach. So a lot of places have, you know, the tragic White Lady, you know, in her wedding dress. Some tragedy occurred before her wedding or after her wedding. And you tell stories of this particular one. There's a couple different ones. The ones I gravitated towards told of this apparition. Just a young lady in her wet gown appeared in the middle of the road. A car drove through her, thought they hit her, got out, seen that she was still standing there. She was talking to them, asking for her long lost lover, like, where's my fiance? She leaned up against the car, put her hand on the car, and it was wet and let a wet handprint. Something happened, and she just disappeared. She got spooked, and these younger kids that were in this car drove to their uncle's gas station nearby, told this story, and, you know, obviously it's so far-fetched, and her uncle didn't believe it, and they looked down on the hood of the car. There's a wet handprint still there. So this girl was apparently drowned by her fiance because he didn't want to go through with the wedding. It was on their wedding night. You know, he took her there to talk to her. You know, he wanted to see the dress even though he wasn't supposed to, and he drowned her in this watering pool, basically, you know, the dam. We talk another interesting one is of a local lore called Becky's Grave. So it ties in with some Native American burial ground and a woman that was dubbed Becky, not sure what her real name was, but there's a couple different alternate versions of the story. One says that she was helping out the Native Americans that were there. She befriended them. She was helping teach them different techniques while they taught her some farming techniques and different, you know, skinning animals, hunting techniques, stuff like that. And obviously in that era, when you were an independent woman, she didn't have a husband, she didn't have a family, what were you considered? You were considered a witch. So she thought that they were, she was learning from the Indians and she was cursing the villagers and she was a witch, so they burned her at the stake. The other story was that she was helping out the Indians, and basically tragedy happened. Somebody took advantage of her, killed her, tried to hide it, and she came back and haunted them with a vengeance to the point that they were insane, drove them insane. These people killed themselves, and that was the curse of Becky. People say that in this area, that when you go to this grave, sometimes at night, you can just hear like Native American war drums in the horizon.
Dude, I can only imagine how horrifying that would be, because I hear about that stuff even like at the Civil War battles, like some of those places where you hear like the drums off in the distance. Like the whole intention of that was supposed to sound like a big army and be intimidating in the first place. But if you hear a big army but there's no army coming over the field, like that's fucking horrifying. It's like the Aztec death whistles.
Yeah, I mean Gettysburg has so many of those battlefields are haunted, and even any of the Civil War ones that go from the south, like you got Old Green Eyes in Georgia. You're talking about, I think what one was it, the White Lantern Man or something like that was another one in, I want to say, Virginia. So you have these tragic events that happen in this massive loss of life, and something sticks around. It's usually not the good stuff.
And you got one of the OG states too, where you guys had a lot of the stuff for like the revolution that was going on in your state. You guys had a lot of the stuff going on for obviously the Civil War. So you guys not only have like, one of the main times that blood was shed on American ground, but it was both times that blood was shed on American ground. So it's like that entire side of the country is so shrouded in blood loss from like the years of people that have lived there that it's like, I feel like you could almost live anywhere in that area, the whole Appalachian area, almost all the way down the coast, and you're probably going to end up living somewhere haunted or near somewhere very haunted.
That's just it. Like I said, I can probably go into Johnstown here and point out 15 different buildings that I've heard random stories from. And even to the point, one of the local steel mills, there's a story about the melt shop ghost, where somebody fell into one of the vats of steel that was being made accidentally, haunted the area because they would see this on the catwalk. They would hear noises and moaning, and then just see someone that would just melt in front of them, to the point that even when the melt shop was torn down, dilapidated, and they paved over, they would still hear moans and cries in the parking lot. But then that carries over to, obviously they probably still made use of the vat that was there, and some of that would have made it into all of the early buildings in that era of the steel mill area in Johnstown, and maybe 50s, 60s type of thing, when they were rebuilding after the second flood in the 30s. So you would have haunted girders and all this crazy stuff. This person's essence is still there. So you could go to buildings downtown, and when you hear creaking and shifting, because that's how these old buildings are, people would think that was the moans of the melt shop ghost.
It almost kind of makes you wonder sometimes if just the land of the U.S. seems like it's got a lot of like really weird stuff going on. As far as like the cryptids are just way darker, the hauntings are like way darker. Maybe the natives were onto something with the fact that they all stayed nomadic. Maybe there was a purpose for that. Maybe it wasn't so much that they didn't like necessarily like establish like big cities, anything like that. It was just a matter of they knew that almost all the land was weird to a certain extent, so it was almost better just to always stay moving on the land.
and then you go over to Europe, and you're talking about pixies and elves and
way less dark.
Goblins and gnomes. Yeah,
still dark. They trap you in another reality, but at least you're not getting ripped apart in this reality, right?
You're hanging out with David the gnome. They shrink you, and you have tea in their mushroom. So how bad could that get?
Yeah, versus getting eaten alive by a dog man over here. Shit.
Yeah, you get the lizard man ripping your car roof off because you don't like cars, and he's like
Mothman flying alongside your car going 60 miles an hour screeching at you like
possibly crashing bridges, that
skinwalkers, like gotta love America and its cryptids, man. What else can I say?
A lot of that's just, I think, the mindset of most of the population, because what's more popular here compared to like Europe, other parts of the globe. Horror movies, slasher flicks, like it gained prominence in the US. You just have a darker mindset, dark art, dark humor. Like a lot of that was frowned upon in European civilizations. So I mean, you come over here and we just have a different mindset on things. It's just our culture in general.
Yet we have a weird mindset on the fact of like we have the scarier monsters and cryptids, but yet we're like, fuck it, we're gonna just build a road right through the area of where there's some Sasquatch known to be. You know, they end up destroying the construction equipment, all that stuff. We keep working through it. We're like, no, nothing weird's happening here. Out in Europe, they're like,
American
all right,
cemetery.
Yeah, there's a fairy area in the middle of the woods here. We're going to loop 100 miles out of the direction in order to avoid this fairy area, and then we're gonna loop back because we're not gonna go through their area. So it's like they got the less scary shit, and that they're more cautious about not trying to piss it off.
Yeah, like I said, we're building Walmarts on Native American burial grounds with the bones still there. Like, whatever.
Poltergeist were like, man, we can't afford all those prosthetics. Let's get some real bodies involved in this movie.
That's right.
Hold on tight, guys. This is our last break, so stay tuned. And we are back to the show, so let's hop right in. Well, man, I guess kind of starting to wrap it up towards the end. I always like to end the show with some words of wisdom. So if there's any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners today, man, what might it be?
Words of wisdom. Look to the skies. It's out there. But seriously, as we were talking about doing art, keeping things rolling, just do art. If you have the will to do it, the capabilities to do it, whether it's a hobby, whether you're just doing it on the side, a couple days a week, one day a week, or you think you might be able to make a career of it. We need more art in the world. We need more people being creative in any aspect, and wish that everyone could live their dream, that everyone could make millions of dollars doing what they love. But hey, if you enjoy what you do and you can make art and have fun with it, that's all that matters.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, like you were kind of saying, even if you're only able to do it once a week, once every couple of months, if it's something you enjoy, just make sure you make some time for it. You know, you may not be able to do it every single day with the busy schedule, but if it's something that you enjoy doing, like for yourself, man, make that extra time.
Yeah, just don't give up doing it. I've been there before where I just wanted to say, I don't want to do art anymore because I can't make a living out of it. And, you know, I kept at it when I was doing my Creatures of War comic book. Wednesday night was comic night. Every Wednesday, I worked on my comic after work for a couple hours. It took years to get each issue out, but that's kind of what started my groundwork for people liking my art.
Hey, we all got to start somewhere, man. And a lot of the time, people don't realize that in order to get a big project done, you got to start attacking it little piece by piece. Like, you know, you don't go tomorrow and start a podcast. You don't go tomorrow and start a TV or a t-shirt company. You know, you got to start off piece by piece. You start off with the little goals. You know, you get one little piece done at a time, and then you eventually build up to doing the bigger project. So I think that's a hard time that a lot of people have with something, is that they really want to be able to do something, but they don't know where to start with it. And they see the big project and they think that the end goal is going to be impossible to get to. The best advice that I could throw into anybody that's in that situation is start with a small piece by piece, and build it up to be that bigger project. And once you get it established, you'll look back and you'll go, wow, I'm glad that I took the time to actually do that. And I'm glad that I did it in a means that didn't stress myself out, but rather I was able to attack it piece by piece to make it so that I could feel productive and good about myself that I made it to this point.
Yeah, I say too that sometimes it seems like you're just yelling into the void. You're doing your art, you're doing your project, your creative outlet, you're just yelling into the void. Eventually, your people will hear you. You'll find an audience. It's just takes time. It's not always overnight. Some people go viral and they get lucky with that, but that never lasts. You got to build an audience step by step.
Hey, if you stop doing something, you don't know if tomorrow might be the day that you might get discovered. That's what a lot of advice that I hear is, you know, the day that you stop, tomorrow might have been your day.
Exactly. I mean, the other cliche, you hear people say you miss 100% of the shots that you don't make, right?
Ain't that the truth? Well, I guess talking about also not missing a shot, if anybody wanted to possibly go and check out your designs, pick up some of these awesome designs for themselves, which I, of course, mention at the end of every show. If people don't listen to that part, I highly recommend going and checking these t-shirts out because, as most people can see on the show, half of my wardrobe is Cryptoteeology and has been for the past 3 or 4 years now. Where can people come and find your art? Where can they keep up with you at? Where can they see future art that you're working on? And I know that you're always going to events and putting on events, so where can they also be able to find that information?
should be able to get my web store is my website. It's Cryptoteeology. You can find all my creatures, monsters, comic books, trading cards, posters, just about everything that I'd have at shows on the website gets shipped out. Cryptoteeology on Instagram and Facebook. That's where you can kind of follow along with what's currently happening, shows that I'm going to, new art. It's usually posted there before it hits the website, get a little preview out there. And that's kind of where I got. Everything comes from me, no AI from me. It's all hand-drawn. It's all computer programs like CorelDRAW, Illustrator, Photoshop. So keeping it real, throwing it out there to the lexicon, shouting out into the void.
Hoping that the void will bite back eventually. Oh, actually, it has. It already has partially bitten back. Well, continues to bite back, I guess.
It does. Sometimes I like it.
Well, man, as per usual, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. We'll have to make sure that we don't go nearly as long without having a conversation, even if we're not going to, well, I'm not going to shows, unfortunately, as often. But I really enjoyed the conversation, man, and I'm looking forward to next time we get to chat.
I hear you. Next time will be wrestling centric. How about that?
Perfect, man. We'll get into creature wrestling, and wrestling in general. It'd be perfect, man.
Yep. Gotcha.
Big thank you to everyone for catching this week's episode. Just a reminder that this show wouldn't be possible without listeners like you. Podcasts are a labor of love. I don't want to be able to keep this show going for as long as possible. So if you guys would like to support the show and all the hard work behind it, don't forget to leave a review or rating for the show anywhere that you guys happen to listen to me. And once I find it, I will, of course, read on the show and give you guys a big shout out. 5-star ratings are one of the best ways to make sure this podcast gets seen. So if you guys want to help this show to continue to expand, that is one of the best ways that you guys can do it. You guys can also share the show through word of mouth. That is one of the only ways that podcasts like this grow. So anything that you guys are willing to do, I more than appreciate. And if you guys are in a position to support the show and find value in what I do, please consider donating to the show directly. That is absolutely the best way to support the show. And you guys can do that through PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App. And you guys can leave a note with that. And once I find those, I will, of course, read your guys' note on the show, whether it's promotion for your business, personal message, anything like that. I will make sure that I read it on the show because I definitely appreciate you guys giving any value that you guys find in the show. So, of course, I will give that value back and appreciation back. Another way that you guys could consider supporting the show is by going and checking out the Patreon. Over there is only one tier available for $2.50 a month, and with that, you guys will get full access to everything I have going on over there. Try to make it super duper simple, and that is cheaper than a bag of chips, cheaper than a can of soda throughout the month. So it's a great way to support the show. And if you guys want to see what it's all about, there is a 7-day free trial available over there. And if you guys like it, hopefully you guys will end up sticking around. And last but not least, you guys can go and check out the Bizarre Reality Media merch store with t-shirts just $15.68 plus shipping, which equals out to about $20. So realistically, not too bad, especially considering you guys would be supporting the little guy in the process. And all those designs over there are done by me and by Chris Holmes of Conspire Theory Podcast. So if you guys want to support some independent artists, we would definitely appreciate it. And if you guys would like to keep up to date on the show, you guys can follow the show on Instagram and Facebook. And you guys can also catch live shows and video content on the Bizarre Reality Media, TikTok, YouTube, and Rumble channels. And if you guys would like another podcast to get you guys through your work week, and you guys haven't checked it out already, please consider checking out my other podcast, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin. We've been expanding over there as far as the topics that we talk about, talking about breaking down a lot of these concepts of the occult, on top of course, a lot of creature research, but we dive into a lot of the same topics that we do on this show, just the difference being that we dive into it from our perspective and our research with some guests sprinkled in along the way. So if you guys enjoyed this show, I definitely think you guys will also enjoy that show if you haven't checked it out already. And if you guys missed any of that, every single thing that I mentioned is available off of the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hope today's show's connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. I'm Dr. D's taking a roll of craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to